Good day. We are Aguhon PH Team Leadership Development, and we invite you today to look into what the future holds for leadership development in Quezon City by 2050. The vision of Quezon City is to be a model of effective governance and responsible leadership. While the emphasis is on leadership, it is not distinct from but rather necessary for governance. And although the city has its fair share of leaders today, there is an impending urgency to develop a new set of leaders who will take on the cudgels not only of resolving contemporary problems but addressing future agenda. Further highlighted by the pandemic, the paradigms have changed from VUCA to a tuna world. The more complex dimensions of turbulence and novelty are exemplified by COVID-19, which in turn underscores the need for leaders whose foresight, innovativeness, and flexibility, among others, are not only innate but developed. As the most populous city in the Philippines, it is certain that among the more than 2 million citizens of Quezon City, many will answer the call of leadership and lead to serve if leadership development is to be instituted as a future agenda. It is interesting, therefore, to ponder on how the leadership development in Quezon City will look like in 2050 through a two-variable scenario planning illustrated in a 2x2 matrix. The two variables are good governance by the QC-LGU and co-innovation between the LGU and the academe, alongside all other sectors. For better comprehension, we have operationalized good governance as the degree of institutionalization of leadership development in the local government level, and co-innovation as referring to the vibrancy of multi-sectoral collaboration in promoting leadership development, such as in terms of opportunities. As a product of our generative interviews, policy brown bag discussions, collaboration canvas, and civic startup, we have crafted these 4 plausible scenarios of leadership development in Quezon City by 2050. No one's business. This is the worst-case scenario, for there is both low degree of institutionalization and low multi-sectoral collaboration. Our concept of leadership will remain heavily influenced from foreign cultures and concepts, with little to no regard to our unique and cultural leadership attributes. Further, the lack of our own unique concept of leadership as a society can influence the emergence of multiple but disjointed initiatives, such that each civil society organization or think tank may launch their respective leadership development programs, which may breed redundancy, or worse, nobody may participate in them. In this 2050 scenario, leadership development will remain to be everyone's vague objective that lacks clear and set indicators of accomplishment. It will be an invisible sector that only few exclusive leadership institutions may be aware of. By not enshrining leadership as an agenda of governance, the scarcity of leaders cannot be understated. There would be an evident lack of initiative among the citizenry to voluntarily partake and lead initiatives, and therefore the city will be forced to import leaders or rely on the current administrative staff, which may not also be capacitated for such roles because upskilling through leadership development was abandoned. Hence, this scenario posits a city with no leaders. Next is only one's business. That one refers to the government. In this scenario, there is now a high degree of institutionalization of leadership development, as it is already a key agenda in the governance platform, as shown through the establishment of an office exclusively focused on it, with the mandate of ensuring that leadership development efforts are sustained to cater the community, especially the youth. However, there is a clear lack of bridges between the government and the other sectors, as there are no opportunities for academic consultation, communication, and partnership. Leadership in 2050, therefore, will lead to a rather imposing, somewhat dictatorial approach to leadership development. Since no other sectors are engaged in this pursuit, the government alone will lead the charge, which could result in redundant, static, inconsiderate, and perhaps inappropriate initiatives at times, due to a lack of stakeholder engagement. By ignoring the academe and several sectoral organizations, for instance, leadership development programs spearheaded by the government may lack the necessary robustness in terms of the content and consequently lack public engagement due to a poor grasp of the grassroots context. A singular top-down approach to leadership development will not be able to determine the design of the programs that can accordingly respond to what the people need and want to know about leadership. While leadership somehow entails a single source of authority, developing it is not just one's business. Definitely, it is not just the government's business. Next is the Menace Business except one. In the face of a vibrant multisectoral collaboration, this scenario is in need of institutionalization, that the government pays attention to what the other sectors are doing in advancing leadership development. There may be a proliferation of leadership institutions, such as from the universities, which in turn may produce a lot of beneficial studies to address the problems the city confronts. However, this may be trapped in echo chambers of the academe due to the lack of opportunities for coordination with the government. Results of related studies and research would be practically useless if the recommendations will not be considered in the policy-making process and programs of the government. Worse, there could also be an antagonistic relationship with the public sector and the civil society, with the latter lambasting the former for its lack of enthusiasm and assistance in the endeavors of the universities. Essentially, the ultimate disadvantage in this scenario runs both ways. Without government support for the leadership development agenda, the universities are deprived of having a deeper understanding of the current leadership landscape in the public sector because of lack of information caused by either 1. Avoidance by the LGU to communicate through interviews, or 2. A general lack of information since it is not a priority. On the other hand, by not collaborating with the academe on these matters, the LGU is wasting its most precious resources encapsulated in these communities of learning, the ideas and outputs of the faculty and the student fleet on matters relevant to the affairs of the city. Next is the best case scenario, everyone's business. This is the best scenario because this is what leadership and leadership development really is. Here, the government places leadership development as its key agenda, not only in the short run but in the long run, in cognizance of its seminal importance both in the present and in the future. The established LGU Office or Task Force on Leadership Development will set the stage for a coordination network with other sectors, especially the academe, for regular communication, such as in the form of innovation labs. In this way, there will be a systematic approach wherein the government and universities approach academic endeavors such as research in a more meaningful manner, like studying the problem set of the city and devising a policy solution that could address it. The implementation of the arrived solution entails a vibrant multisectoral collaboration, which can be more aptly called as a long-term partnership with the LGU. In this case, leadership development not only becomes the domain of the LGU or of the academe with their respective leadership institutions, but everybody's business, including the common people, especially the youth, as comprising both the present and future generations of leaders. To achieve that optimal scenario, by putting it from paper to reality, backcasting our necessary courses of action spanning 2021 to 2050 will greatly aid us in that pursuit. 2021 to 2029, the seed decade. As of 2021, there are a handful of institutions, think tanks, and non-governmental organizations devoted to leadership development in Quezon City. On the other hand, there is no city office or even task force duty-bound to pursue leadership development. It is in this decade, therefore, of the 2020s, that the synergy among the local government unit of Quezon City and these aforementioned leadership development organizations be forged and maximized. Since the current institutional setup handicaps government in this pursuit, these organizations will collectively support the Quezon City Futures Lab. In the process, there should be a special legislative committee on leadership development whose primary purpose is to reach out to these stakeholders and craft a leadership development plan for the city and its constituents. It will identify the roles and challenges of the involved stakeholder as it acknowledges that leadership development of the city demands a multi-sectoral approach. The primary goal of this committee is to create a city office for leadership development by 2030. 2030 to 2039, the growth decade. By 2030, we envision a Quezon City with a stronger capacity building program, spearheaded by the city's newly established Leadership Development Office, which shall focus on active citizenship in local government affairs, and as well as participation in civil societies. Programs for strengthening leadership development must be present in every primary, secondary, and tertiary education institution. These specialized leadership development programs will cater to the needs of all the sectors across the city: leadership in local bureaucracy, urban management, public health, education, peace building and security, environment, and economic empowerment. Futures thinking will also become a major part in the program to equip leaders, not only with the vision, but the motivation to achieve that vision, such as to what we are doing today, backcasting. The office must also start identifying the gaps that limit people from taking part in leadership opportunities and provide recommendations to relevant offices on how to bridge those gaps. The development of continuity plans of all organizations, institutions, and agencies shall be advocated for. It is projected that through the decade's aggressive campaign in developing leaders, that by 2040, a significant number of these newly trained leaders will comprise the Leadership Development Office of Quezon City. 2040 to 2049, the established decade. Beginning 2040, there will be a boom on the new generations of leaders, and as well as a boom on volunteers, the many projects of the LGU. Cognizant of the looming climate crisis, many of this new breed of leaders are to be deployed in aiding in disaster risk reduction planning and efforts. Speeding up this leadership development agenda is the adoption of digital learning platforms, which will enable all citizens, regardless of age, to partake in these leadership development programs. What will emerge then is a community of leaders, composed of the many leaders both trained and rekindled by this push of the Quezon City for leadership development. To facilitate better coordination and fruitful cooperation, a digital community platform for these leaders will be established. This will be a venue for the sharing of best practices, exchange of insights, and redress of grievances. Although we project that the demographics of this community is predominantly young, a significant portion will also be comprised of young adults and adult professionals who will volunteer their free time in support of the leadership endeavors launched by the city. Sustaining this trend will be at the heart of Quezon City leadership development by 2050. 2050 and beyond, therefore, will be recognized as the further expansion decade. By 2050, Quezon City is not just the city of stars, but also the city of leaders. We expect that there will be no more scarcity of those who are willing to lead in all levels, from the grassroots, youth, and up to the highest positions of power. These leaders are unlike any leaders before. They are remarkably flexible, futures-oriented, and faithful to their call of leadership and service. In this light, beyond leadership development training programs, there will be a continuing leadership development programs that aim to annually retool current leaders of the contemporary competencies and refresh them on the prospective opportunities to seize and constraints to confront. It is in this manner that the 2050 vision of Quezon City is a vision of a city of leaders well equipped for what tomorrow brings. In closing, we borrow the words of John C. Maxwell, that leadership development is indeed a lifetime journey, which accentuates the necessity of leadership as everybody's business, our preferred plausible future. Once again, we are Aguhon PH, Team Leadership Development, and thank you very much for listening.